and let the truth of what happens after we leave the physical world settle over you. If this narrative resonates with the deepest parts of your soul, if it offers even a flicker of light to a place in you that holds grief, please let us know by sharing this video. Your story matters, and by sharing ours, we heal together. This is the story of Sara, a woman whose life was measured not in years, but in anticipation, and then in an endless chasm of silence. For 10 long years, the nursery in Sara's spacious, sun-drenched home remained silent, a monument to a dream stubbornly refusing to take form. She and her husband Thomas navigated the sterile, emotionally exhausting world of fertility treatments, the monthly hope that bloomed brightly, only to be crushed by the inevitable, isolating wave of failure. She prayed, bargained, wept into her pillow, all for the singular profound desire to hold her own child. It was a decade of deferred life, a constant aching reminder of an emptiness that only the patter of tiny feet could fill. Then, finally, after the last doctor had shaken his head with a look of professional pity, when the couple had stopped trying and simply started existing, the universe answered in a quiet whisper. A faint, impossible line on a test stick that marked the end of the drought and the beginning of boundless, almost terrifying joy. 9 months later, Leo arrived. He was sunshine and chaos perfectly packaged in a small, energetic body. His name, meaning lion, suited his vibrant, demanding, and utterly captivating personality. The silent house exploded with noise, the cheerful clatter of wooden toys, the sound of small, quick feet running across hardwood floors, and, most importantly, Sara's ringing, unrestrained laughter, the sound Thomas hadn't heard for 10 years. Leo was the anchor that brought Sara back to herself, not just a son, but the very purpose she had been searching for. Their life settled into a rhythm of unparalleled perfection, school drop-offs filled with sticky morning hugs, evenings spent reading fantastical stories under the glow of a warm lamp, and weekends exploring the world. Leo loved the thrill of motion. His blue bicycle, slightly too big for him, became his favorite steed. He named it Comet, and they spent every afternoon after school riding on the quiet, tree-lined sidewalks of their neighborhood, Sara walking patiently alongside him, her heart overflowing with a quiet, fierce gratitude for this miracle she held. One Tuesday afternoon, just after the autumn leaves had turned to copper and gold, Leo was 9 years old, and the world ceased spinning. He was on his Comet, practicing the tricky turn at the end of their block, when the sound of screeching tires tore through the peaceful air. A sedan, driven by a man whose consciousness was drowned in cheap liquor, veered wildly off the street. The sickening crunch of metal against plastic, followed by a heavier, unimaginable sound, shattered the silence of Sara's perfect world. One moment, there was a flash of blue and a boy's bright giggle. The next, there was only a horrifying stillness, a tableau of unimaginable destruction on the sidewalk, framed by the indifferent beauty of the falling leaves. Sara reached him in time only to feel the last faint warmth leave his small hand. The driver stumbled out, a grotesque figure of ruin and self-pity, but Sara saw only the life draining from her son's eyes. The loss was immediate, total, and absolute. It wasn't just a child she lost. It was the decade of struggle, the triumphant, hard-won joy, the very framework of her identity. The following years were lived in a monochromatic haze. Sara became a ghost in her own home. The laughter was gone, replaced by a hollow echo in the now too quiet rooms. She walked past the empty swing set in the garden, the blue bicycle rusting slightly in the shed, and felt physical pain, a constant gnawing void in her chest. Thomas tried, bless his patient soul, but even his love was a faint star in the overwhelming darkness of her grief. She was consumed by the injustice. 10 years to bring him forth, only 9 years to enjoy his light, and then senseless violence extinguishing it all. The anger was a fiery, exhausting companion, fueling the torrent of tears that flowed in private, soaking the pillow where Leo's scent still faintly lingered. She could not accept the finality of it. She couldn't accept that the purpose she had fought so hard for had been snatched away by the carelessness of a stranger. Her quest for meaning began, desperate and frantic. She sought answers in psychology, in religion, finding temporary distraction but no true solace. It was during this decade of living purgatory that a friend, gently and without pressure, introduced her to the teachings of the great Brazilian medium Chico Xavier. At first, Sara was skeptical, hardened by her pain, yet something in the simple, unwavering faith of the messages of life continuing beyond the veil, of love that transcended the tomb, pulled her in. She read accounts of parents receiving letters from their children, letters filled with details that only the family could know, letters that didn't just offer hope, but verifiable proof. The accounts spoke of the medium's simple humility, his refusal of payment, and the sheer volume of comforting communication he facilitated. Sara felt a tremor of possibility, a desperate, irrational hope rising from the ashes of her despair. She realized that her suffering was not unique, that across the globe, thousands of parents were walking the same agonizing path. The idea that Chico Xavier's work was a balm for all these souls provided a focus for her search. She spent months researching, feeling an almost magnetic pull towards the spiritual centers that carried on this work, seeking a bridge, any bridge, back to her son. The possibility was a tiny, fragile ember, but she protected it fiercely from the icy winds of doubt. It took nearly 10 years, a lifetime since Leo's last bike ride, before Sara finally found herself in a small, unadorned room. The air was thick with quiet expectation and the faint scent of old paper. Opposite her sat a kind-faced elderly woman, the medium, Sister Sophia, known for her clarity and grounded nature. Sara spoke only Leo's first name and the date of his passing. She offered nothing more. Sister Sophia closed her eyes, her hands resting calmly on the table. The silence stretched, charged with an invisible energy. Then the medium's breathing changed, deepened, and her hands began to tremble. When she spoke, her voice was not her own. It was higher, lighter, carrying the distinct cadence of a 9-year-old boy trying very hard to sound grown up. Sara froze, her decades of grief momentarily suspended, replaced by a terrifying, exhilarating certainty. The voice began, addressing her simply as "Mommy," and then the message started to flow, a torrent of words written not with pen and ink, but with the boundless energy of love, transcribed onto the medium's pad. This was not the general, vague comfort offered by psychics. This was intimate, specific, undeniable connection, the verifiable proof Sara had been seeking. The medium wrote for nearly an hour, filling page after page with a small looping script, occasionally pausing to weep, overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the message she was channeling. The room faded away, leaving only Sara and the echoes of her son's presence, manifested in the shaking hand of the kind stranger across the table. When the channel closed and Sister Sophia blinked back to reality, exhausted but serene, she handed the stack of pages to Sara. Sara's hands shook so violently she could barely hold the paper. She didn't have to read the general opening. She went straight for the meat, the verifiable truth she needed to anchor her sanity and her belief. The letter was signed simply, "Your Comet Pilot, Leo." "Mommy, I know how hard it has been, and I know you think I am gone, but I am just wearing a different kind of shirt now, one that doesn't get rips when I fall off my bike. That day everything was confusing. Like when the screen went black on the old computer. Then the black went away and I was just floating. It was beautiful here, but I cried when I couldn't see your face, and that's when Grandpa Arthur came. You never met him, but Thomas's dad, the one who passed away before I was born, he was right there smiling. He told me he was my official welcoming committee. He took me to a garden that smells exactly like your rose bushes in July, only better. And guess what? Grandma Eleanor, your mum's mother, who you always told me stories about, she's here too, and she knits the best scarves. They call this place the House of Tranquil Path, well, and I know it sounds silly, but that's the name. Grandpa Arthur told me to tell you that he finally finished fixing the old grandfather clock that was in the attic, the one that stopped chiming 50 years ago. He says he got it right this time, and it chimed at exactly 4:00 a.m. the morning after I got here. You remember the little black and white dog I always wanted? The one we saw at the shelter? The one you said we couldn't get because we traveled too much? Well, he found me. His name is Barnaby, and he has a brown spot over his left eye, just like the picture. He follows me everywhere. And Mommy, tell Mr. Peterson that his jokes still aren't funny. Mr. Peterson is the principal, but not the one at my school. It's the one who runs the kindergarten here in the House of Tranquil Paths. He's very serious, but I make him laugh anyway. I have a new school here too, and my teacher is named Mrs. Nightingale. She doesn't use chalk, she uses light to write on the boards, and she knows everything about the stars. She gave me a special job. I'm supposed to help the new kids who are scared and confused, the ones who just had their screens go black. My best friend is still Daniel, the one in the 3rd grade with the bright red backpack and the bad habit of chewing on his pencil. But here, Daniel doesn't have that big stutter anymore when he talks about his dinosaurs. He sounds so clear, Mom. You remember when I lost my favorite blue marble, the one with the silvery swirls inside, the one I cried about because I thought it was magic. It wasn't in the flower pot where I thought it was. It was under the loose floorboard in my closet, behind the old winter boots. You need to look there. I found it when I was cleaning up my room before I came here. It's safe, it's waiting for you, Mommy. The most important thing I need to tell you is about your tears. Every tear you cry for me is a drop of water on a seed that's supposed to grow into a beautiful flower of help. When I look at you and see you hurting, it's like my new light shirt feels heavy. You spent 10 years praying for me, and then 10 years crying for me. That is 20 years of precious energy, Mom. I'm not dead. I'm just busy learning new things, and I need you to be busy too. I need you to take all that big love you have for me, the kind of love that made you fight for 10 years just to have me, and I need you to give it to the children who need it most. They don't have a mommy like you. I need you to find the nearest place where there are children who are hungry or lonely, or who have nowhere to run and play. I need you to volunteer there. I need you to transform your suffering into service. Every time you wipe a tear from a lonely child's face, or teach a little girl how to read, that is you loving me. That is my garden growing. Don't let your pain be the end of your story, Mommy. Let it be the start of a chapter filled with service and light. This is my new plan, and I need you to be my partner in it. Don't worry about me. I am safe. Grandpa Arthur and Grandma Eleanor are taking such good care of me, and Barnaby and I run faster than Comet ever could. We are together. The separation is only in your mind. The love is forever. And please, please tell Thomas that his silly habit of leaving his keys in the fruit bowl still makes me giggle, even from here. I love you, Mommy. I see you. And I am waiting for the day you transform your tears into smiles for other children. Be brave, my lioness. Your little comet pilot is flying high. Sara read the letter once, then a second time, her breath hitching not in grief, but in disbelief, then blinding incandescent certainty. The paper shook less now. The sheer volume of intimate, verifiable detail was staggering. Grandpa Arthur, Thomas's father, the one she had only known through photographs, had died suddenly before Leo was born. The old grandfather clock in the attic had indeed stopped 50 years prior, and Thomas, a talented but perpetually busy engineer, had always promised his father he would fix it one day. No one but Thomas and Sara knew that story. Grandma Eleanor, her own maternal grandmother, was a name that rarely came up, yet the detail of her persistent knitting obsession was utterly correct. The dog, Barnaby, was a fleeting conversation they'd had on a shelter website that she had forgotten until that very moment. But the blue marble, the talisman of Leo's 9-year-old world, that detail was the final devastating blow of truth. She had searched his room 1,000 times, distraught by the thought of every tiny memory, but she had never lifted the loose floorboard under the closet's lip. That night, with trembling hands, she drove home. Thomas, used to her haunted silence, looked on as she frantically tore the dusty winter boots from the closet. Under the floorboard, nestled in the dark, was the iridescent blue marble, exactly as Leo had described, its silvery swirls glinting under the flashlight. The fact that the marble was there, a secret known only to the mind of a child who had since transitioned, shattered the wall of Sara's skepticism forever. The realization that her son was not a victim, but a resident of a new, vibrant dimension, brought a strange, radical peace. The pain of separation remained, a deep, constant ache, but the corrosive acid of revolt was neutralized by the balm of acceptance. Leo was busy. She needed to be busy too. The shift was not instantaneous, but it was relentless. Within weeks, Sara found the children who are hungry and lonely. She started volunteering at the Allegria orphanage, a small underfunded facility in the city's industrial district. She started small, folding laundry and sweeping floors, still too emotionally fragile to face the children directly. But Leo's words, "Transform your tears into smiles," echoed in her heart. Slowly, tentatively, she began to read stories to the youngest children. Her voice, once choked with sorrow, regained its familiar melodic warmth as she immersed herself in tales of brave knights and friendly dragons. The transformation was profound and visible. The children, sensing her genuine maternal warmth, gravitated towards her. She learned to rock the infants to sleep, her arms, once empty and aching, now filled with the weight of small, needy lives. She started a small reading program, helping the older children with their homework, often finding herself teaching a difficult word or patiently explaining a historical date, channeling the same fierce love and dedication she had once poured only into Leo. The orphanage became her sanctuary, the place where her grief found meaning. She poured the entirety of her being into their welfare, organizing clothes drives, fundraising for new supplies, and most importantly, providing the consistent, unconditional love many of them lacked. The tears still came, sometimes triggered by the sight of a 9-year-old on a bicycle outside, but now they were different. They were cleansing, connecting, and quickly transformed into action. The emotional healing was underway, a slow, gentle mending of a soul fractured by tragedy, all guided by a letter from a dimension she once thought impossible. Sara's experience is not an isolated miracle. It is one thread in a vast tapestry woven by the spiritual messengers of the world. In Brazil, the simple, self-effacing medium Chico Xavier served as a living bridge for decades. He received thousands upon thousands of letters from the so-called deceased, communications that brought comfort, verifiable proof, and, most importantly, direction to millions of grieving hearts. These letters, often detailed and specific, helped prove the continuity of life, shifting the conversation from blind faith to informed certainty. They were and remain a testament to the fact that love is not terminated by the grave, it is merely transposed. Chico Xavier's legacy lies not just in the messages he delivered, but in the countless lives like Sara's that were fundamentally changed by the revelation that our loved ones are never truly gone, but are waiting, active, and often busy in the luminous, extra-physical realms. His work validated the ancient truth that death is merely a curve in the road, not the end of the journey. Sara, sitting quietly in the orphanage library, reading a fantasy novel to a small group of children, felt that truth in the steady, courageous beat of her own healing heart. Her pain never vanished. How could it? But her revolt did. The hole in her life was now a wellspring of compassion, a continuous act of service that honored the spirit of her little comet pilot, who flew on a different path, but remained eternally by her side. If you love this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that subscribe button. It truly means the world to us and helps us grow. And hey, while you're at it, let's aim for 50 likes on this video. Help us smash that goal.